And welcome back to the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. A lot of action around the trade deadline today. We saw a few trades that we're going to get into in just a moment. But most recently, the LA Angels have acquired some more help for Shohei Ohtani, bringing in Randall Grichuk and CJ Cron. If you guys are new here to the Upside, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. We're going to be live for you guys all day on Tuesday during the trade deadline, so we will bring you the latest as it happens. Follow us on Twitter at UpsideSN as well. Make sure you turn on your notifications so when we are live, we will, over the next couple of days anyway, you will be able to get that notification and join us as well. Really appreciate all of those of you who subscribed today. Gained over like 12 subscribers in the last 24 hours. So overall, just a great weekend for baseball. Really appreciate all the support. Had quite the active live this afternoon. Wasn't expecting to do one, but the trade deadline dictated that we had to do one with the addition of Jordan Hicks and Jordan Montgomery to the list of players who have already been traded ahead of the trade deadline. So you can see by the graphic behind me some of the names that could have been available here at this year's trade deadline. Max Scherzer's already been checked off the list. Marcus Stroman sounds like the Cubs are at least going to make a push for the postseason. They've already announced Bellinger won't be moved. They didn't go quite so far to say Stroman. I haven't heard his name as one of the guys that's off of the market, but I don't think they're going to move him at this point either. Verlander is in a similar situation. Verlander seems to really like it in New York, and so far the offers haven't come in good enough to be able to peel Justin Verlander out of New York. Now remember, he's got a full no trade. He can veto any trade that he doesn't, or any team that he doesn't want to go to. But I find it hard pressed that he'd want to go through a tough couple of months stretch here and not compete for a World Series. I think if he's, I think of a team that comes by and says, "Hey, we're a World Series contender. We want you to be one of the aces of our staff." I find it very difficult to believe Justin Verlander would turn that down just to stay in New York for a hopeful World Series contending team in 24. But welcome in here to the Upside. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe on the video. Already got 12 of you guys in here right now. Appreciate you guys for joining us. In case you guys are new here, we've been covering the trade deadline here for the better part of a week now. Every night we're kind of updating you guys as to what's happening around 8:30. We're going to be live for you guys again tomorrow night. We'll be live. And then again, as I mentioned, we're going to be live all day long on Sunday, so be sure to join us. As for the LA Angels trade specifically, first and foremost, they had the injured player in Taylor Ward. We mentioned that earlier today. His injury, facial fractures. He was originally put on the 10-day IL. To make room for the pieces coming in, they have transferred him to the 60-day IL Tells me that Taylor Ward's injuries are on the significant side. They probably won't get him back till the very end of the season, if not into the postseason, if at all. Tells me Randall Grichuk's probably going to take his spot, or at least the majority of the at-bats in that spot. CJ Cron's addition to this is kind of fills the need Jamer Candelario was rumored to fill on this team. Not sure he plays too much at the DH spot because that's Shohei Ohtani's place. But as far as a first baseman, he might be the new everyday first baseman for the LA Angels. They still have Drury, etc., that they can use there as well. Moustakas they could use there occasionally. They have a lot of different options at third base right now that they could also flex over to first. But CJ Cron seems to be the guy that they're probably going to turn to for the majority of those first base at-bats. As far as the return for the Rockies, they weren't going to get much. In fact, the Angels farm system is pretty thin right now. Even after trading their number 2 and 3 prospects, after those pieces are moved out, now the number 8 and 28 pieces go out as well. So before the trade, this would have been number 10 and number 30 anyway before the trade. So we'll see what this means for the Angels as they try to track down the Toronto Blue Jays, who are ahead of them right now in the standings. Now, of course, they struggled over the weekend with the Toronto Blue Jays in Toronto. They did bring in Lucas Giolito. They brought in Ronaldo Lopez. They're sticking with Shohei and not trading him here at the deadline. So they're kind of all in, not just with their team this year. They're in with their team for the next 5 years as far as the pieces that they could have gotten for Shohei, the pieces they did give up to bring in Giolito and Ronaldo Lopez. I do see them as a team that could really get hot like they were just before they made that trade for Lucas Giolito and ran into a stone wall anyway in the Toronto Blue Jays. They could recapture some of that momentum quickly, but for right now, they're still on the outside of the playoff picture looking in. Welcome back, I'm Heel. What's one more move you think the Rangers need to make in order to solidify this team as a World Series team? First, I don't think they're necessarily a move away. I think they're already a really good roster as currently constructed. They first and foremost need health. Health is everything right now at this time of the year. You saw the injury to Taylor Ward allowed that since it happened before the trade deadline, they were able to fill that gap. The injury to Jonah Heim happened before the trade deadline. He may still come back, but I wonder if the Rangers decide, hey, if he's unable to come back this season, do we say that Sam Huff is enough of a backup catcher behind Mitch Garver? Is Mitch Garver a good enough starting catcher for the pieces we're bringing in for our starting rotation? Of the trade market that's out there, maybe guys like Salvador Perez, who have experience handling a good pitching staff before, could come in. Maybe they go with a guy who has very little success behind the plate as far as handling the pitching staff in Wilson Contreras, but could give you similar numbers to what Jonah Heim was producing for you this year. Be an interesting conversation among Rangers front office executives as to what route they go. As of right now, I'd imagine they're going to stick with Sam Huff behind the plate. As for one move, I would guess they're going to go bullpen next. I think they're going to add some of those pieces that are in that starting rotation right now as kind of the long relief guys to that bullpen. Grant Anderson was good today out of that bullpen for them. He was demoted previously, not because of performance, but just because he was the one guy with options still in that back end of that bullpen. But I still think they need one more good relief, middle relief, or closer type option. If they want to go a little bit less cost, since they've already gone a little bit bigger here with Montgomery and Scherzer, two of the top pitching options here at the trade deadline, maybe they go for a guy like Keenan Middleton, who's having a nice year for the White Sox. If they decide to go at the top of the market, if the Padres, who just swept the Rangers, decide, hey, we can't let this opportunity pass up, Josh Hader's that good of a talent that he can get us some future pieces for our team, and while we have a good bullpen, Hader makes us that much better, we might be able to withstand the loss of Josh Hader and still be able to compete for a wild card spot without sacrificing the investment we made in the trade for Josh Hader. So we'll see what happens there. I think the better option, though, on the trade market would be a guy like David Bednar, has more control, probably be easier to acquire since they're not in a playoff race. And if you overwhelm them with an offer front line by starting pitching, I think if Owen White was the first piece in that deal for a guy like David Bednar, then you fill that out with guys like Franklin Gutierrez, maybe some second base, middle infield options that are blocked at the minor league level. I think you'd be talking about David Bednar in a Ranger uniform by the end of the trade deadline. Welcome in, Anthony. Welcome in, Mark. What would the Marlins have to give up for Salvador Perez? It wouldn't be a whole lot. Marlins are one of the teams that have been connected to Salvador Perez. He does have a home there in the offseason. Very familiar with the area, and I think pretty much anybody offensively would be better than what they've had so far at the catching spot. They're said to be really interested in the Gleyber Torres market. We'll see if they get something done there. It sounds like they're really hot on that one right now. That would be an upgrade for them a little bit offensively. The addition of Salvador Perez, I think, would be invaluable for them for their young pitchers as well. Yuri Perez has been fantastic for them so far this year, but Sandy Alcantara has had a tough year so far. He might be rounding into form as well. Welcome in, Timothy. Should the Mets trade Verlander, Pham, and Cash to the Astros for prospects Clifford and Ruiz? Good question. I just don't think that's enough of a package for the Mets to be able to say yes to on Verlander, because I think the Astros are going to have the Mets eat in the neighborhood of $30 million of that deal. I don't think Clifford is a good enough prospect to be able to get it done alone. Ruiz, I don't think gets it there either. You're going to probably have to include Baez and maybe one other piece as well. Even then, it's still going to be up to Jim Crane to really talk with Justin Verlander and see if they can iron things out, mend fences, if you will, after the comments he made after the season and about the contract Justin Verlander was ultimately looking for, basically saying no pitcher on his roster would ever make that much, ever, period, end of story. That was his comments about Justin Verlander. Justin Verlander said something to the effect of, yeah, well, watch me walk out the door. That's going to have to be mended first and foremost. Justin Verlander is going to have the ultimate say here whether or not he accepts a trade, even if Jim Crane does the mea culpa and says, hey, I apologize, even if the Mets agree to the money in the deal, even if they get the prospects right. I think it's a little too complicated of a deal for the Astros to be able to make. Now, teams out are definitely interested in Justin Verlander. There was a rumor I saw floated an hour or two ago about the Braves at least checking in on the price of a Justin Verlander. I'm not necessarily sure that they would go that direction, but it sounds like they're looking for at least one more starter. I think they're more inclined to go for the Detroit Tigers' arms in Eduardo Rodriguez and Michael Lorenzen. Lorenzen's another Astros target. We'll see if the Astros are able to pull a trade off for one of those starting pitchers. But as of this morning on Jim Bowden's Sirius XM radio show for the MLB Network, said that they were not looking for a starting pitcher at that moment. They were looking to upgrade the bullpen, and this was even after the trade for Kendall Graveman. So kind of keep that in mind. Now, of course, they could do an addition by bringing in a starting pitcher, and then one of their current starters goes to the bullpen. That could be another way they address their needs in the bullpen. They're also looking for a corner outfield bat / DH type of hitter, somebody else to lengthen out that lineup just a little bit. But I think the biggest need for this team right now has to be starting pitching. You're talking about a team that no longer has the experience of a guy like Zach Greinke, Garrett Cole, Justin Verlander. They're relying on a guy like Framber Valdez, Hunter Brown, those types of players at the top of their rotation. Javier as well. There's just a lot of youth at the top of that rotation right now, and we saw how Framber Valdez got absolutely rattled in a regular season game against the Texas Rangers when he was asked to throw at Marcus Semien. The next time Marcus Semien got up, absolutely annihilated a ball into the Crawford boxes. I'm just not sure that the Astros will be able to, be the vaunted Astros we've seen over the last 4 or 5 years if they don't add a starting pitcher. That's the biggest need, I think, on their roster that they need to address. Yankees aren't making the postseason either. Offense is dead without Judge. I would agree with that. If Judge gets hurt again, I don't think they make the postseason. I don't think they have a chance. I think they probably finish 4th out of the 4 teams competing for that American League wild card right now. In case you guys missed our earlier live, I picked Toronto to win the final wild card spot, the Angels to finish just short, the Yankees after that, and then Boston. Those teams are all vying for that final wild card spot. I think Houston and Tampa Bay are going to be the 2 wild cards if the divisions hold as they currently are, with Baltimore in the East, Texas in the West, Minnesota in the Central. Guardians, I don't think, have enough juice to really get up there and contend with the Twins. Their starting rotation's been very good in Minnesota. They just need that offense to start clicking a little bit better, and they'll be just fine. But as for the Yankees specifically, Aaron Judge is literally going to have to carry them on his back like he did last year across the finish line. I didn't think they added enough from an offensive perspective. They certainly did good as far as pitching, bringing in Carlos Rodon. The injury to him earlier this year certainly hurt, him missing so much time, but I thought they should have added more pieces at the back of the rotation in case they ran a starting pitcher short, and that's what ultimately happened. They ran out of some starting pitching early on in the season. They missed Aaron Judge for all that time as well. That certainly didn't help matters. But as of right now, I have them still finishing outside of the playoff picture. And if they don't have Aaron Judge, if he's not literally carrying them, if he's not the Aaron Judge of last year, we're talking about a team that could finish in last place in the American League East. Granted, it's a great division, but we're talking about the New York Yankees here. Welcome back, Sub-Zero. Welcome back, Sarah. Your cards are not done yet. Exactly. It sounds like they're actually talking trade right now around Flaherty. We'll see if that trade ultimately gets done. DeYoung is another name that's expected to be moved before the deadline. That trade may wait until Tuesday. It sounds like the Giants might be the most logical fit for him. They have some more bullpen pieces that they could possibly move as well. So things are not done with the St. Louis Cardinals. They've done a nice job selling here at the deadline. Really like the prospects they've brought in. And we'll see, what ultimately this team looks like after the season. I still think there's at least 2 more trades in that Cardinals system ready to be made. I think an outfielder is going to be traded. I think Flaherty is going to be traded, and then DeYoung. So there's 3 right there that are going to ultimately be moved. And they're looking for some starting pitching. As we talked about in our live earlier, we talked a little bit about Nolan Arenado and the possibility of him getting moved. Mozeliak came out the other day and said, hey, we're not trading Nolan Arenado. He's not on the market. Nolan Arenado, of course, said he would waive his trade clause to go to the LA Dodgers. I told you guys at the time, before that announcement was made, I'd put the trade possibilities for Arenado at less than 1%, 0.001%. After that news coming out, I told you it was still slim to none that it wouldn't or that the trade would happen, but it was still less, right around 1% chance that Arenado would get traded. The more I keep looking at that St. Louis Cardinals team, the more I like the idea of them moving on from Nolan Arenado. Not necessarily because Nolan Arenado doesn't fit to the team or he's not going to be great for their future or anything like that. I just think they can maximize his value right now because there's really nobody on an offensive side here at the trade deadline that's going to make an impact even close to what Nolan Arenado would bring. If they just eat a little bit of that money, they could get some top 20 players in the game as far as prospects in the game. Really like that idea for the Cardinals. Do I think it'll happen? No, I don't. But if I'm a Cardinals GM, if I'm in that front office, I seriously consider, a trade package that's centered around some starting pitching, get a couple of top-end starting pitching prospects from a team like the Dodgers, maybe some other pieces around it, and then you're really cooking with gas at that point. Carlson might get traded as well. I agree. The Yankees are the team that's been most connected with him. Gleyber Torres to the Marlins is rumored. Yes. It'll be interesting to see what the Yankees do. If they end up moving a guy like Gleyber Torres, do they end up buying as well? But I think it's a tough season for the Yankees to decide to go ahead and shove all their chips to the center. Welcome back, Caleb. You hearing anything on the Reds? Starting pitching, and starting pitching. I think that's where they're looking right now. I think the Reds have the pieces to be able to get some of those controllable starters on the market as well. We look at what they did last year with the Luis Castillo trade, Maile, etc., pieces that would be invaluable to them for this season. Those are the pieces that they need right now. So 1 year after trading the pieces that they're going to need for a playoff run, they have to go out and reacquire those types of arms. Logan Gilbert makes some sense from the Seattle Mariners. Maybe sending a guy like Jonathan India going the other way. Maybe one of the middle infield prospects as well that you traded for Luis Castillo could go back the other way. And then the Mariners solve their need at second base for the foreseeable future. But starting pitching is the name of the game. There has been some rumors about them being interested in Eduardo Rodriguez, Michael Lorenzen, and Jack Flaherty as well. Anthony, what are your thoughts on the last comment? What are the Marlins to have to give up for Salvador Perez? And what would it make sense for Marlins to trade for a catcher like Perez? It would make a lot of sense. I think, like I said, they need offense pretty much in any way they can get it. Salvador Perez, literally anybody would be an upgrade from what they've had this year. So Salvador Perez would represent an improvement there. As far as what would they have to give up, not much. We're probably talking a top 15, top 20 type prospect as the headliner of the package, and then maybe some filler beyond that. India just went on the IL. Yeah. Sarah, I want Logan Gilbert or Bryce Miller on my cards. I don't think you have the pieces to get a guy like Logan Gilbert. You're going to have to trade some top-end talent if you were to go that route. It's going to have to be a baseball player for baseball player type of trade. Some of your outfield prospects perhaps could go the other direction. Logan Gilbert would be great in a Cardinals uniform. I agree. I just don't think you have the horses to be able to get that one done. Other teams out there that are needing controllable starting pitching, I think would be able to outbid you just because while you have some good talent and it's already at the major league level, I think those guys are very likely to stay in a Cardinals uniform. Meanwhile, other teams out there have prospects that they could be willing to deal for controllable starting pitching for a pennant race. So we'll see what happens. Let's kind of dig into some of these rumors out there. Braves, as I mentioned, are connected with some starting pitching right now, most notably with the Detroit Tigers. They linked up on a few trades over the last year or so. So maybe they'll go back to the well here and see if they can get something done. Let's go ahead and refresh it and see if anything's happened. As of yet, not yet. Hopefully we get some trade chatter tonight. And there's the announcement, India being placed on the IL. Caleb, who do you think is going to win each division? Well, my predictions before the season look somewhat decent and somewhat horrendous. My horrendous ones being the Toronto Blue Jays and the San Diego Padres. But as of right now, let's kind of check in on those standings as we speak. So in the American League, let me refresh this page as well just to make sure we got the most accurate information. Baltimore on top. You got Texas and Minnesota. I think that's probably how the teams are going to finish as far as division winners right now. As far as the wild card spots, I'd pick Houston and Tampa Bay to flip-flop there. I think Houston's going to have a little bit more to say there. I think Tampa Bay has really lost a lot of their steam. Wander Franco seems to be in his head right now. They don't have Diaz at first base. Their power has really been sapped. They're certainly struggling. I think a starting pitcher would help out the Houston Astros to be able to climb just barely over the Tampa Bay Rays. And for the final wild card spot, as I said, I'm still picking Toronto. With the addition of Jordan Hicks, kind of solidifies their bullpen for me. I really like what they've done. I think the Angels have made some really nice improvements, but they sit 4 games back of the Blue Jays right now. Lost 2 of 3 to the Blue Jays in a series that really would have helped them out should they be able to close the gap a little bit there against the Blue Jays, but it did not happen. Red Sox, I think, are the worst of the group right now that are competing for that wild card spot. I think they finished beneath the Yankees as currently constructed. If Aaron Judge misses more time, though, we could see them finish beneath the Red Sox. I think that's pretty much how things finish out in the American League side. I think Seattle's too far out and doesn't have the pieces to be able to get it done to climb into one of those wild card spots, but who knows? Every year we're surprised by one team or another making that late September push, adding or gaining 10 games on the teams in front of them. We saw that with the Braves against the Mets a couple of years back. We saw that with the Red Sox and was it the Rays? Can't remember, but I think it was the Rays that they were playing that they won or lost so much ground in that time frame. It was one of the weird years where 10 games were made up in 1 month. Now, as far as the National League side, my kind of division winners, Atlanta, I think, is going to run away with the East. Dodgers, I think, are going to run away with the West. Central, I'm going to pick Milwaukee if they hold on to Corbin Burns. If they don't hold on to Corbin Burns, which I think there's an outside chance he could be traded in a similar fashion to Josh Hader last year, literally out of nowhere to try to recoup some value before his value really disintegrates after the season and at the trade deadline next year. I don't think they'll be able to re-sign him, Adames, and Woodruff. I think it would behoove them to go ahead and trade one of those guys, and they already soured their relationship a little bit with Burns during the arbitration process before the season. So if Burns is still there, I would pick Milwaukee to win the division. If they trade him, I'm going to go with either the Cincinnati Reds or the Chicago Cubs. I think if the Milwaukee Brewers trade a guy like Corbin Burns, I think Milwaukee finishes outside of the postseason picture, and I think the Cubs and Cincinnati Reds make it. If they don't, Milwaukee ends up holding on to the Central, and I think Cincinnati gets one of the wild card spots. As far as the other wild cards are concerned, Philadelphia, I think, is going to end up getting one of those spots. I find it hard to believe Dombrowski's not going to find just the right piece to get them over the hump and into the wild card. And just like last year, we saw them as the last wild card team make it all the way to the World Series. So we'll see if it's an aberration with the new playoff format or if this is kind of a new trend. Win and get in, and then see if you can make something happen. Just a pure dice roll at that point for any team that makes it. I think Arizona's going to miss the playoffs here a little bit. I really like the additions Miami is really trying to do here. They've done a great job with hopefully getting Gleyber Torres. Hopefully they'll get another catcher in as well to kind of improve their offense. I think their pitching additions that they've made to the back end of the bullpen with Robertson and Lopez give them a little bit more talent on the back end and dependability back there, kind of lock up those games that should be wins. But you look at their run differential, that's the one thing that worries me, is that the offense isn't going to be able to do enough. So maybe bringing in Gleyber Torres will help jumpstart this team offensively, but I'd really like to see them add another bat in addition to Gleyber Torres and see if they can get something done. Welcome in Mr. Woke, Rangers need another bat. I would agree. We mentioned a few times that the Rangers are really trying to do blockbuster level type trades right now. They were looking at Max Scherzer as kind of a blockbuster type of move. He certainly qualifies as that. Jordan Montgomery, if you check out our trade deadline list from MLB Trade Deadline or MLBTradeRumors.com, who's the number one target here? That would be Jordan Montgomery. So we shall see. Welcome in, Kay. Angels are Brian, bro. What are they doing? Made the deadline so boring. I don't know if it's boring. It just doesn't necessarily have the cachet of an Ohtani being traded to the Rangers or the Dodgers or the Yankees or the Giants or the Orioles. But you're still getting some unique trade headlines here. Because the Angels are adding here at the deadline, it's making those prices for those teams selling here go even higher now that they've decided to add here at the deadline. But I do agree with you. The Rangers do need to add a bat there, Woke. My idea was looking at kind of a blockbuster move for an offensive player would be a guy like Pete Alonso from the New York Mets, who's really starting to hit well. His BABIP in the first half was absolutely atrocious. He's going to have some positive regression. Already has 30 home runs. He could be a guy that could carry the team when you have guys like Corey Seager miss a little bit of time because they're nicked up because of a quad or a hamstring injury that keeps him out for a week or whatever. Alonso could be a guy that could be an aircraft carrier for you guys in Texas. So that would be one guy I would look for. Other guys that, on the periphery that have like a 1% chance of being traded, guys like Arenado, guys like Goldschmidt, those are the level of players I think would make a big enough impact on that Rangers team for them to go out there and make a trade for. Outside of that, I don't really see them going out there and doing like a small, piecemeal type of trade. Like for Tommy Pham, they've been connected to him. It would be a little bit of an upgrade over Brad Miller, but they're looking for bigger fish. And if that's ultimately what they're left with at 4:59 on trade deadline day as the last option is Tommy Pham, they'll do it, I'm sure. But they're looking for bigger game than a guy like Tommy Pham. They're looking for more of an impact than CJ Cron or a Randall Grichuk. They're big game hunting right now. They smell a World Series possibility in their future. That's why they're adding to their rotation. A couple of really good starting pitchers coming in. Eovaldi should be coming back in a week and a half. Seager should be back either tomorrow or Tuesday. Jonah Heim is the real question mark behind the plate. Will he be able to tolerate the pain after having that strained tendon in his wrist? If he's not able to handle it, sounds like his season could be over. So, again, like we mentioned earlier, Sam Huff. Now's the time for the Rangers front office to either put up or shut up in their faith in Sam Huff. They really haven't given him any chance here at the major league level to get consistent at bats and really get a feel for playing at the big league level. I know he hasn't had a lot of success, if at all. He had a big home run in that Houston series anyway, but he hasn't really gotten regular at bats. It's been few and far between. Maybe gets one pinch hit at bat, a week. The previous few times he's been called up, never really got any catching duty. And we got to see him behind the plate in the start today for Martin Perez. So we'll see what ultimately happens for the Rangers at the deadline, but a bat is certainly a need for them. I think they're going to be looking for a corner outfield bat, maybe a catcher. That's why we mentioned Wilson Contreras, maybe Salvador Perez. The main reason there is because Salvador Perez would be able to handle the pitching staff much better than Wilson Contreras. I think the Wilson Contreras signing is ultimately what made the pitching staff for the Cardinals, what's the right word here, so inconsistent, I guess is the best way to put it. Basically, the first couple weeks of the season, they say, hey, Wilson Contreras is not going to be our catcher anymore. We're going to limit him to DH duties and maybe shift him to first base or outfield. A week later, they're like, no, we're not going to do that, and they decide to bench him for a week. Then they bring him back, and he's going to be their full-time catcher again. It tells you just how much faith they had in him as behind the plate. They're hoping he would be a replacement for Yadier Molina. He's been a replacement. Good? Probably not. I think that contract, I think the Cardinals would really like to have a do-over on that one, and the Rangers might just give it to him, especially since they're looking for some offensive production behind the plate and at the DH spot. So even if Heim does come back and is able to resume catching duties, which I think is still a tall task, right now I would be surprised. I think a best-case scenario for the Rangers right now is that at least he could grip a bat. I don't think he'll be able to do catching duties behind the plate. I just don't think he's going to be able to do it with that strain. And so that's where I think the issue is going to come for the Rangers, is they're going to need a defensive catcher back there like at Salvador Perez. But if he's not able to come back at all, Jonah Heim is out for the year, then you need the bat that Jonah Heim already was, plus another bat at the DH spot. Maybe Mitch Garver catches fire. He's been an offensive-minded catcher before, a little bit better defensive player than a guy like Wilson Contreras. But Rangers are in probably the catbird seat right now here at the trade deadline. They still have probably the best prospect pool in order to facilitate trades. They have major league talent that's ready to go. They have some AAA options they've held on to so far. The only top prospect they've really given away is Luis Angel Acuna. They gave away Sagassi. They gave away Roby earlier as well. But Acuna is really the only one of real value that they gave away. I really like the deal the Cardinals made, though, to bring in Montgomery, or to trade away Montgomery to the Rangers. The one thing that we didn't report on earlier is that they actually included bonus pool money for the international signings as well. So really good get for the Rangers, not only for this year, but they also add to their pool so that maybe they can replenish some of this farm system that they're going to be trading out. They've had a lot of success in that international market. You'd have to figure Southern teams usually have the leg up in that type of market anyway, already having the infrastructure down there to be able to scout those types of players. Most of the other teams in the Major League Baseball have similar types of development strategies for international free agents, etc. But the Rangers, the Marlins, high revenue teams like the Dodgers and Yankees also have a really good presence in international baseball as well. And getting that slot pool money from the St. Louis Cardinals is being valuable to them. I think they'll use it better than the way the Cardinals would, and the Cardinals use that the opportunity here to maybe lose a little bit of that money to be able to get a little bit better prospects back in return, like Roby, like Sagassi, and like a reliever in John King. So let us know in the comments section what you think of the trade deadline so far. This is our third live of the day, so make sure you hit that like and subscribe. We'll be live for you guys again tomorrow at 8:30. And we'll be live again all day on Tuesday during the trade deadline. So if you're new here at the Upside, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We've gained quite a few today and yesterday as well. Really successful weekend here for us at the Upside. Really want to thank all of you guys for joining us and subscribing. Going to put out some shorter videos for you guys tomorrow, recapping some of the trades that we've seen so far and what is left to do for the contenders around both the American League and National League. But as far as the trade board so far, let's kind of run down this list, just kind of recap where we're at right now, and then we'll probably call it a night unless we see some trades happen. Right now, Baltimore on top of the Yankees 9-3. They scored 6 runs before ever recording an out in the game as well. Candelario is the top one on the board left from this list anyway. Now that the Angels are off the board there, maybe he goes to another team that needs a DH. Like the Texas Rangers, could be a fit there. He's been rumored to go there as well. Houston's been rumored as well. The Yankees have touched base on his market as well, and the Miami Marlins. So kind of a robust market for him. I don't think it's going to cost a whole lot, but there's just a lot of teams checking in, at least on his price. Michael Lorenzen, we've talked ad nauseum about his possibilities of going to the Baltimore Orioles. I think he'd be a perfect fit there. Astros, probably the second team in on that market right now, and the Reds on the periphery. Marlins, I'd probably put way back there in 4th spot according to what they have on their information there. Tommy Pham, they have all the way up here at 4 because they think he's going to be traded for sure. I'm not quite so certain. We saw Randall Grichuk go, and I think you're going to see a lot of players like that on teams that are not contending that could be moved. And it's just a game of musical chairs. Are there enough spots out there for a guy like Tommy Pham to be moved? Possibly. Is he a good option here at the trade deadline? Absolutely. But will they ultimately get a trade done? Remains to be seen. As far as what would it cost, not a lot. You're probably talking about a top 25, top 30 prospect at best. Jack Flaherty is the one option left for the Cardinals here. Top starting pitcher left on the market for them. If Verlander is not traded, Jack Flaherty could be the top starting pitcher on the market overall. High value arm there, just a lot left in the tank there. A lot of untapped potential, and that's why I think teams like the Dodgers, teams with really heavily invested in the analytics department might see Jack Flaherty and say, hey, if we just get him in, we could have Cy Young form of Jack Flaherty in our barn, and that kind of a thing. I think that's what the Dodgers front office saw with Lance Lynn, where they could get him back to the way he was with Texas. If he just gets the home run rate reduced alone, I think the Dodgers front office would be happy right there with Lance Lynn. Jack Flaherty has a little bit higher potential, and so that's why I think the Dodgers could use somebody like that, rebuilding that pitching depth as we go into August and September. You can never have too much starting pitching, as the Texas Rangers will vouch for you right now. They would have probably an 8-man rotation if DeGrom was still healthy, 9-man if you had Odorizzi, 10 if you go down to Glenn Otto and Cole Ragans they had before the season. But just look at where their rotation was in April. They had one of the top 3 rotations in the game, to now where they're around 27th with just how their performance has been. Eovaldi's been out the last couple weeks. Sounds like he's going to miss about a week and a half more as they rest his arm more than anything else, just to make sure he's right for the postseason run and into the postseason as well. But they now have a really good 1-2 punch until he's back in Scherzer and Montgomery. I think Gray, if they can get his head on right, he'll be fine. He was great in the first half of the year. Second half, not so much. Dunning, I think, flexes back to the bullpen in that long relief role for those guys who do struggle in their starts. They don't necessarily have to leave him out there and hopefully get another extra inning out of him, even though he'll give up 3 or 4 more runs. Now they can go to a long reliever in the bullpen that they can count on for 2 or 3 innings and then turn it over to their bullpen that hopefully will be better with yet another addition here at the trade deadline. But that's kind of where we stand right now with the market for the starting pitchers. Eduardo Rodriguez, we just touched on him, possibly the Braves reaching out on his market since there's not really a team that's been connected with him. I think the Diamondbacks are probably one of the few teams that have also checked in on his availability. The Baltimore Orioles have also checked in, but the price was essentially going to be too high for them is what we've been told, at least the national media has told us anyway. I think Michael Lorenzen probably fits better in Baltimore anyway for what their needs are this year. Dylan Carlson, we've touched a little bit on him, the Yankees' interest there. Tyler O'Neill, I think, is the better piece, or the more likely piece to be moved, just because corner outfield, DH type of bat, really fits in with a lot of teams and what the needs are on those contending teams. Scott Barlow, the Royals made a trade today, sending Nicky Lopez to the Atlanta Braves for Taylor Hearn. Kind of a depth type of trade for them. The Royals, I think Barlow's high walk rate will preclude him from going to too many contenders out there, but he is another good relief arm out there, good strikeout rate, but the ERA is a little scary, and the walk rate is a little scary as well. Mark Canha, another corner outfield guy, has a club option for next year of $11.5 million. He's a guy that's been floated around as a possible Dodgers fit for another platoon type of role. Dodgers have done well adding to their team, bringing in Kike Hernandez, Ahmed Rosario from the Guardians. A guy like Canha or a Tommy Pham, somebody like that would be a great fit for their outfield, as they always like to do the platoon thing. Canha's been familiar with that for years, playing in Oakland and now in New York. DeYoung, very likely to be traded for the Guardians. We mentioned that the San Francisco Giants might be a nice fit there. However, they just called up Marco Luciano. Sounds like they might try to give him the most reps there, in which case DeYoung could be kind of a utility guy for them. Still think it's likely that he goes there. Stratton went to the Rangers in that Jordan Montgomery trade. Paul Sewald is another good reliever on the market right now. If the Mariners move him, he'd probably be one of the best closers on the market, because I don't think Hader's getting moved, because they did sweep the Rangers over the weekend. You look at the Pirates, unless a team overwhelms them for Bednar, he's not getting moved. So the Mariners may capitalize on a very weak closing market and see if they can extract a little bit higher of a premium from the time or from wherever they trade him to. Braves have been connected to him. I know Dan O'Dowd of MLB Network floated them as an idea to kind of strengthen their back into the bullpen. Very similar type of pitcher, though, to Raisel Iglesias. So I wonder if that alone would preclude them from doing something like that. We mentioned that they were interested in some starting pitching in Atlanta. If they were to do a trade with the Detroit Tigers, maybe they get somebody for their bullpen as well from Detroit. Maybe they do like a stack like we've seen already the LA Dodgers do, bringing in Joe Kelly and Lance Lynn. Those types of trades. So keep your mind open for what could happen with Paul Sewald, but could be an interesting time for Seattle. Blake Snell and Josh Hader, like I said, they just swept the Rangers. I find it hard to believe that A.J. Preller is going to sell here at the deadline. If I'm in the front office, though, for San Diego, I still see the writing on the wall for them to have to trade one of these two players, if not both. I don't think both of them will re-sign with San Diego. They don't have the money to do that. So you're talking about a compensation pick. You're going to have to get a trade that's of equal or greater value than that compensation pick. Plus, you're going to have to get some value for what you're giving up on this season, essentially. So while the Padres have a good bullpen, they certainly would be a little bit lesser of a bullpen. You're talking about having to trade to include more than what you'd get in a compensation pick, and for the loss you're going to sustain from your bullpen this season. Hader, I think, would probably be the easiest to move, because he would immediately go to the front of the line as far as best reliever on the market. Snell would probably be the best pitcher, but I think his market, while it might be robust, I think Hader would probably command a little bit more because of the rarity of elite relief pitching on the market right now. Rangers did the best thing early in the before the deadline, going out there and getting Aroldis Chapman. I think if Aroldis was on the market right now, he would go for significantly more than what the Rangers ultimately gave up for him. So good on the Rangers for getting that type of deal done early. And now we'll see what ultimately happens at the catching market. Bednar, Sewald, Hader, names to keep your eyes on. Teoscar Hernandez, probably the most available Seattle Mariner right now. I don't think he'll be re-signed there. the trade really hasn't worked out for the Mariners. They gave up a good reliever for a guy they hoped would really have a nice platform year as he goes into free agency. They'd at least be able to get a compensation pick for him in return. I don't think that's happening at this point. Teoscar Hernandez, I'm not even sure a trade offer is going to come their way for him because he hasn't played that well this year. Sure, he could break out of it and carry you for a week or so, but he's not going to be the type that anybody's going to fear in your lineup when you get into October because of his struggles so far this year. Seth Lugo, same boat as Josh Hader. I don't think they're going to move him. I don't think what you'd get back in return would be equitable for the loss of him in your bullpen. Keenan Middleton, one of the last relievers available for the White Sox, I think he will get moved. Middleton, if I had to guess, probably goes to one of these contending teams to kind of be their middle reliever. If you're asking him to be your closer or a setup guy, I think you're asking too much. I think if you're looking at him being your 6th, 7th inning guy, maybe even your middle relief guy in case your starter can't go very deep into the game, you need him a high leverage spot. Say your starter can't get out of the 5th. You need that out with the bases loaded in the 5th. Turn to Middleton. He's been good so far this year. Had a little bit of a scuffle into the recent few days anyway, but he's still a very good pitcher so far this year. Has really captured a lot of what he lost over the last couple of years in value. We just saw Grichuk and Cron come off the board to go to the Angels. Rockies still have a couple of relief arms they could move in Suter and Hand. Suter specifically has been mentioned as a possible fit for the Texas Rangers. As far as Hand, a couple of the Northeast teams have been mentioned as suitors for him, mainly the Philadelphia Phillies. I believe the Guardians were mentioned at one point, even though I don't think the Guardians at all are going to do that kind of a trade. But Hand, I think going to Philadelphia might be a fit there. Brooks Raley of the Mets, as they continue their teardown for at least this season. He's had a good ERA so far this year. He does have a lot of walks, though, which does worry prospective buyers here. Rangers specifically don't really like relief pitchers who give up a lot of walks. That's the reason why they've demoted so many of their previous relievers. They just DFA'd their former closer in Joe Barlow from last year. I think he was the closer, or 2 years ago. One of the two anyway. But they just DFA'd him after the trade they made for Jordan Montgomery. So maybe they work out a trade to one of those non-contending teams and see if they can get some cash back for his availability. Tim Anderson, I don't think he gets moved. He's not having a great year. I think they're going to try to pick up his option and see if they can trade him either this offseason or at the deadline next year. Or if they have enough money, maybe even sign him to a long-term deal. Giovanni Gallegos, a lot of potential in that arm. Probably less likely to move, though, than some of the other relievers that we've seen on the market. I just think he's got some control. I think he's got one more year of control anyway. Yeah, he does. 31 years old, 3.77 ERA. He's having a good, not great year. Decent strikeout rate, really good walk numbers, though. So teams that are trying to minimize the walk from the relievers could have some serious interest here. Rangers and Cardinals have already met up on a trade so far. Maybe a trade has worked out for that would include a guy like Contreras going to Texas. If they decide not to eat money on that type of a trade, maybe they include Gallegos as kind of a balancing act for taking on the money of Contreras to get a little bit better of a prospect package back. Paul Blackburn, A's are literally selling everything. Brent Rooker, I think, is their best piece to trade. But I'm not necessarily looking at him as a solution for anybody's rotation. I picture him as more of a spot starter, long reliever out of your bullpen if you're trading for a guy like Paul Blackburn. Verlander, I think, is a very good possibility to be moved here at the deadline. If I'm Verlander, I'm not sticking around to not compete in the World Series this year. I want to compete every single year. I'm not trying to be hopeful that the team is corrected next year and they could make a deep run. The dude is, 41 years old right now? He's not getting any younger. Got a lot of money on that deal. He's pitching very well. And the Mets should be able to get at least a good prospect back for him as well. Think of what they got for Scherzer, and you should be able to get just a little bit more for Verlander because he's been the better pitcher between the two so far this year. Bellinger and Stroman, as I mentioned, I don't think they're getting moved. As we mentioned earlier in the show, couple of relievers for the Tigers, Cisnero and Shreve. I think they could be packaged with either of the two starters they have for sale in Michael Lorenzen and Eduardo Rodriguez as kind of a stacked trade like we've seen with Lance Lynn and Joe Kelly. We saw that with Lucas Giolito and Ronaldo Lopez as well. Rich Hill could be a nice buy low option here, kind of veteran leadership for your rotation. For a team that's inexperienced, like, say, the Reds or Diamondbacks, I think this might make some sense, bringing in a veteran like Hill to help those guys through the dog days of August and September. Is he going to make a difference for you in the postseason? Probably not. But he might be able to settle down your young guys in that rotation after a bad start, be able to get their mind right and stay in the competition a little longer. Jose Quintana's missed some time. I don't think he's a real trade possibility here at the deadline. Let's move on from him. Bunch of relievers here. Bummer, I think, is the least likely to move. Lang as well, I'd put in that category. Hernandez, not a big enough impact, I think, to be able to make a trade for him. But we could see any number of middle relief, long relief trades late in the day on Tuesday. So make sure you join us for our live then. Kyle Finnegan, probably the odd man out in that Nationals bullpen. He's not going to be around the next Nationals winning team. By the way, C.J. Abrams looks like he might be becoming something serious here at the Major League level. Had a couple of hits today, scored a couple runs, had a couple of stolen bases. He might be coming into his own. Part of the return for that Juan Soto trade might finally be working in the right direction for the Nationals. As far as the Mets, Carrasco's not had a good year, has a lot of money left on his deal. Even if the Mets eat every single penny, I'm not sure anybody's giving up anything of real value for him. Maybe a guy outside of the top 30 as far as prospects. Carrasco's pitched to a 5.82 earned run average, while Lance Lynn got moved and has a worse ERA and given up more home runs. I just don't think Carrasco has enough left in the tank for any team to really take a chance on. Ottavino's numbers, though, are a little bit better. Grounder rate's been nice as well. I just think he's got the profile to be a good Northeast type of pitcher, so teams like the Phillies, I think, should make a call on Ottavino. I think other teams that are on the West Coast probably not going to be a fit for Ottavino. He never really seems to want to leave the Northeast. He keeps signing with teams in the Northeast. Really likes that area. I just don't think he's be a fit long term anywhere else. I don't think he would perform as good anywhere else as well. I just think, I don't know, something about him just seems to perform better in that type of atmosphere. Lane Thomas, again, a tough fit to be able to move here at the deadline. Had a great April. Really kind of a breakout year for him. Has a couple years left of club control through arbitration after this as well. Former Cardinal, really has found a home there with the Nationals. I think the Nationals view him at one price point while the rest of the market views him at another. So I don't think the two are going to meet. And so I think Lane Thomas ultimately stays with the Washington Nationals. Same thing here for Elias Diaz. He could be a guy that's moved here at the deadline. Rangers make some sense. Rockies seem to be willing to tear it down here. And he is one of the pieces that they could move. Now, are you going to get enough for him? Possibly. He's not like a superstar catcher, in my opinion. He's, for the guys that are at the top of the market, in my opinion, on the catching side, you got like JT Realmuto, Jonah Heim this year, Sean Murphy, behind the plate. Those are, the top end catchers on the market. Will Smith for the Dodgers. I think Elias Diaz probably falls behind those guys, and catching position as a whole has not been great. He's been pretty good this year offensively. But he's playing in Coors Field, so how much of that is Coors? You have to worry about all those kinds of things. And as I mentioned, the catching market is weak. He'd probably be a little bit better of an upgrade as far as offense for Salvador Perez. A little bit of a downgrade offensively over Contreras. As far as a receiver, I think Contreras would be the bottom option there. I think Diaz would be in the middle and Perez the top option. So Diaz kind of fits squarely in as the number 2 spot on both offense and defense for catcher availability. I'm just not sure a trade is out there for him. He is under contract for one more year as well. Guardians possibly trading Savali, not buying it. I just don't think the Guardians are in a position where they can make any type of trade like that right now. I think they're going to have to stick with what they've got. Joey Bart not going anywhere for the Giants. As I mentioned, the Cubs aren't trading anybody. India just went to the IL, but maybe they can work out a deal with the Mariners for a guy like Gilbert. That would probably be the only type of trade I would see them moving a guy like India, or maybe to the Pittsburgh Pirates for a guy like Keller. But I don't think India's moving now with the injury. Adam Duvall, I think, will be moved here at the deadline, either to the Phillies or Braves. If I had to say the percentage, I'd probably say Philadelphia 60, Braves 40, as far as who ultimately ends up getting him. Maybe the Rangers get back in there. He hit a home run today. He might be shaking out of it after his long swoon anyway. But he was a house of fire earlier this season. Hopefully he can recapture that wherever he ends up getting traded. And then to kind of round out this list, we talked a little bit about the David Bednar, what could possibly be traded for him. Keller is one of their controllable arms. I don't see them trading Keller. He's not performing at a good enough level for a contending team to really add him to their rotation this year. But I think Keller next year or even in the offseason might be a bet to be moved at some point in order to kind of replenish their starting pitching. As far as Bednar, I think he would be a good bet to go out there and make a trade for David to be able to bring in some starting pitching. For instance, we talked about this a few times now. A guy that I think could be available from the Rangers is Owen White. Maybe you headline your package, front load it with some starting pitching with him, maybe a couple of lower level starting pitchers, maybe an outfielder like Gutierrez, etc., just to kind of round out the package. That might get the attention of the Pirates front office and at least get the conversation rolling. Welcome back, David. What's wrong with Dave Dombrowski? I don't think anything, as far as from a front office perspective, is wrong with him. I think the team as a whole just hasn't performed as expected. Specifically, Trey Turner. If they're able to get something corrected there, would be nice for them. But let's kind of check, or if they're able to fix Trey Turner, I think that would be the best deadline acquisition they could make. Period. But just looking at some of the rumors, just see if anything else is breaking here late. We could see some late night trades, in which case we'll probably do a short little video for you guys. Make sure to join us tomorrow night as we will be live at 8:30 again for you guys. Really appreciate you guys joining us. Some Sunday night baseball tonight. Orioles demolishing the Yankees. Seeing some reaction to the Angels bringing in Randall Grichuk and C.J. Cron for their number 8 and 28 prospects. Before the trade for Lucas Giolito, these guys would have been number 10 and number 30 in their system. So overall, the LA Angels certainly are all in. The Texas Rangers appear to be all in. We shall see what they end up doing. Welcome back, Cobra. We'll have a little bit of fun with you guys on the trade simulator, and then we'll probably call it a night, save my voice for our long live that we're going to do on Tuesday. But let's kind of have some fun here with the trade simulator now that the Angels have made yet another trade. I want to look at the Colorado Rockies a little bit. We haven't really talked about them at all. I'm curious about that Diaz, what his value would be, what they have him at right now. Let's just take a look at his value alone more than anything else is what I really want to see. So Diaz right now, let me go to catcher. This will make it easier. There it is. Okay. Catcher, Diaz, -8 value. Ouch. I think that needs updating. I don't think he has that low of a value. Has 1 year left of control, and it's not exactly a costly contract either. So maybe he could be a fit for other teams. He is 32 years old. They do need somebody to be able to handle their young pitchers. However, they did just put 4 guys on season-ending injuries with Tommy John surgery, all of them on the same day. So Rockies, no matter what they do, they can't seem to get their pitching figured out. Like I said, if I'm a Rockies GM, I want to improve my team. I want to look at possibly, just going as best offense as I possibly can, try to bludgeon these teams and try to win that way. I think that might be the future for the Rockies because nothing else is really working. But let's go ahead and refresh the page here. Let's do a trade here. Which team do we want to do? Let's see. We got a couple of Phillies fans in our chat. So let's do a Phillies trade. We haven't really done one of them too often. Let's do... Let's do the Red Sox. So for the Red Sox, I think the 2 pieces that they would have interest in, James Paxton and Adam Duvall, are both pieces that could be on the market right now for Boston because they're going to have too many players on their roster. They need to clear up some of this roster logjam that they have. So guys like Paxton could be available here. Let's just see what their value is at the moment. Paxton has a value of 6. That's pretty high, I think, for him, actually. And then you look at, where is he? Duvall. There he is, 0.9. So not exactly too high of a price for the Phillies to be able to pay. I think this is the type of trade similar to what they did last year for Brandon Marsh. Kind of a stopgap in the center, and Marsh has really had a nice rebound and has become their a lock for their lineup for the foreseeable future. He's been a good get for them. They gave up O'Hop to be able to bring him in, or I believe it was O'Hop, or was that the Syndergaard trade? One of the two. But in either event, I think this is a doable trade for the Phillies. Now, what could they give up? They do have some possibilities. If I'm the Red Sox, I'm looking for some pieces that could either help me this year to try to make a push for the playoffs, or I want some pieces that are a little further away. So let's go ahead and do that option first. We'll go with a 20-year-old second baseman. Since they have Story on the team, they could use some middle infield help eventually. I don't think Arroyo is going to be their long-term answer there either at second. We'll go ahead and add one more low-cost guy. Let's go with an 18-year-old shortstop for both of those pieces. Gets you pretty good value there. If you're a Red Sox fan, I think you get pretty good value. Let's go ahead and cap it off with one more small move. I want to do a starting pitcher. And there we go. Okay. Couple of really young players that they add to the trade. They get a shortstop, 18-year-old shortstop, 20-year-old starting pitcher, and then a decently valued 20-year-old second baseman as well, for two guys on rental type of deals that aren't necessarily vital to this team contending for a postseason spot. So for Phillies fans, what do you guys think of the trade? You get a corner outfield bat in Duvall. You solve some of your bullpen rotation needs with Paxton. I think this would be a great get for the Phillies here at the deadline. And that might be about the best they could do here at the deadline. I don't think they're going to really, commit too heavily to the season because, as I said, they just need to get Trey Turner hitting like Trey Turner, and their offense is going to be just fine. I think the bullpen is where they could use some pieces. Maybe a guy like Keenan Milton, we've mentioned him a few times. Tigers could move some of their middle relievers like Shreve. They could go that route as well. Sub-Zero, Yankees, and Marlins working on a trade. Yes, they were. Let's go ahead and do that type of trade for Gleyber Torres. Go ahead and clear this one out. As we mentioned, they were looking at doing a trade for Gleyber, so let's go ahead and pull that up here. Marlins and Yankees. Yankees are going to include the first player, obviously, in Torres. Let's say they just kind of keep the trade simple here and just do Torres. 9.8, not too much value here. Marlins, Yankees are still trying to make the postseason, so you're not necessarily just looking at prospects. You're also looking at major league talent on this roster. They were interested in a guy like Cabrera for the Marlins. I'm not sure they have enough juice to be able to get that done, but I do think they could get some of these starting pitching prospects, maybe a guy like Meyer. They could go for a shortstop prospect, even though I think they've got enough shortstops at the upper end of their minor system right now. If I'm doing this trade and I'm a Yankees front office representative, just to kind of clear off some space and might give me some ammunition for other trades, I would go the starting pitching route. Watson is a nice piece to get, though. Let's go ahead and put him in the trade. I know I've said starting pitching, but I really like that, and his value is actually kind of low from what I thought it would be. Do I think they would get him? Probably not. Let's go ahead and include Fulton here, 21-year-old starter, and just look at where our value is right now. Right now, this type of a trade, probably pretty similar values. Not sure the Yankees say yes. I'm not sure the Marlins say yes. I don't think this is enough for either side, honestly. But it's a good starting point for discussions. I don't think Cabrera is going to be the piece that the Yankees ultimately end up getting back. I think that they're going to have to settle for something a little bit less than that. And so something like this could really work out in their favor. Maybe they turn around and trade Watson for another piece here, like Carlson here at the deadline. Maybe they turn Fulton around, whatever they decide to do here at the deadline. But this is a trade that I think could clear up some of the logjam in New York while getting the Marlins some reinforcements offensively. Yankees get a couple of prospects. They've been hemorrhaging some depth prospects for years. The Cashman trades really haven't worked out, especially that Joey Gallo trade. Ezekiel Duran, I think they would love to have Ezekiel Duran in his future right now. He would solve their need for an outfield bat right now and probably be their everyday second baseman at this point, or even third baseman. But as things stand right now, it's just the way the cookie crumbled for them. Let us know in the comments section what you think your favorite team is going to do here at the trade deadline. We played around with a few kind of a smaller type of trades. Let's finish on a high note. What could be a major trade out there that we could see? Let's go ahead and do the Mets for this last one. And we've connected them to the Rangers before for guys like Verlander when we did trades for that. Now that they've got Scherzer and Montgomery, I don't think they need another starting pitcher, but they could go out there and say, hey, we don't want another team getting a guy like Justin Verlander. Hey, New York, we'll give you another top 100 prospect in order to bring in Justin Verlander, one, to have him in our rotation, and two, to keep him off of the Houston Astros or the LA Dodgers, whatever the case may be. I don't think it'll happen, but just an interesting thought out there. Now, what else? Where else could Justin Verlander go? Let's look at the LA Dodgers. Dodgers are one of the most connected teams to him outside of the Houston Astros. I just don't think that Verlander and Crane are going to be able to see eye to eye enough in order for Crane to say yes to the trade and in order for Verlander to say yes to the trade. So the Dodgers are probably the most likely team here. There's Verlander right there. We're going to go ahead and include him in this trade. We're going to include about 35. We're going to include $36 million like they did to the Rangers, just to see what they could ultimately get back. Now let's go over to the Dodgers side of the equation. Looking at the value here, you're getting about 25 total value, including the cash. That's probably a top 100 prospect. So if they decide to go that route, I would expect a starting pitcher to come back the other way in a guy like Sheehan. I know I've mentioned his name quite a bit. That's because his value is right there, and he's already major league ready. He's ready to be in the rotation right now. Mets need some young starting pitching, and this would be a great guy for them. I think he could handle the bright lights of New York. So we'll go ahead and headline the package with Sheehan. Now let's go down a little bit lower. Maybe another guy at the top that they could get here would be Stone. Two top-end pitching prospects. I know this is probably a little rich. Maybe you include a reliever in this trade as well. But this would be a great trade, I think, for the LA Dodgers if they get the Mets to eat that much money, because they would still be able to shine Shohei while staying under the tax this year and kind of reset their clock and still be able to go out there and give him a $60 million in average annual value contract for Shohei next year. So remember, you got to keep that in mind with the Dodgers. That's their goal, is to sign Shohei. Mets and Astros, I just don't think it's going to happen. I just don't think Verlander's going to say yes. I don't think Crane's going to say yes. For the money that the Mets are going to have to eat, I don't think the Astros are going to be willing to give up the prospects. So I think in all three phases, I think it's a no from Verlander. I think it's a no from Jim Crane. And I think it's going to be a no from the New York Mets when they look at the trade package that the Astros would send them for Verlander. Especially when you look at this type of trade package the Mets could get from the Dodgers. There's nothing in this trade besides maybe Gilbert that could be even close to a value, the same value of a Sheehan in this type of a trade. And they're not going to trade off of their major league roster. It's just not going to happen. So if there is going to be a Verlander trade, I think it's going to go elsewhere. There was some rumblings about the Atlanta Braves checking in on his price. I don't think they're going to do it, but it's interesting to note that they're at least checking in to see what's available there. It'd be even more curious to see them trade him within the division. We've already seen an in-division trade from the Mets sending David Robertson to the Marlins. So maybe they'll surprise us once again and send him within the division. But for my money, I think they're going to go for one of the Tigers starters or for one of the other starters on the market like a Mike Clevenger, etc. I don't think they're going to pay premium prospects for a Justin Verlander because I think their rotation is already pretty good in Atlanta. The Dodgers, meanwhile, just need some more depth. And if they don't get a guy like Flaherty, they could turn to Justin Verlander. So let us know in the comments section what you think of this trade. If this trade were to actually happen, I would give this trade an A+ for the Mets. I'd give this trade an A for the Dodgers, just because they get another frontline starter, cost them the future of a couple of good starting pitchers, but they get Verlander for one more year after this, and they'd still be able to save money and go after Shohei in the offseason. So that's why I'd give it A for both and an A+ anyway for the Mets. But thank you guys for joining us here tonight. We'll check in one more time just to see if anything else is breaking at the moment. Nothing on the trade rumors. Let's double check Twitter just to see if anything else is happening. Doesn't look like it. Again, the big trade this evening was Randall Grichuk and C.J. Cron going to the LA Angels as they continue to revamp their organization a little bit around Shohei Ohtani, trying to make a push for that wild card spot. The news out of Anaheim, of course, is that they lost Taylor Ward. Sounds like for the season at this point. He's on the 60-day IL. Could be back in time for the postseason or at some point in the postseason, but he's got some facial fractures he's dealing with. That's kind of what spurred the move to bring in C.J. Cron and Randall Grichuk. As far as the other trades that we've seen today, Nicky Lopez, kind of a small trade going to Atlanta, a depth middle infield type of option for Atlanta. Taylor Hearn gets a new lease on life with a team that might actually use him the rest of the way and see if he can pitch at the major league level. And hopefully, with some, a team backing him up, maybe he'll, rebound his career a little bit. He was formerly one of the top pieces in that Keone Kela trade from Texas to Pittsburgh a few years ago. And then when you look at the other trades today, we saw Jordan Hicks go to the Toronto Blue Jays in exchange for their number 7 prospect and a lower level prospect as well. Meanwhile, the Cardinals also turn around and send Jordan Montgomery, Chris Stratton, and some international bonus pool money to the Texas Rangers. in exchange for the number 11, 14 prospects, and a relief arm in John King. The international bonus pool money was the piece that was just announced over the last couple of hours. That part originally wasn't reported in the original breakdown of the trade, so good get for the Rangers. They've had a lot of success with international free agent signings, to develop in their minor league system. You look at Sebastian Walcott, the success they've had with him. You look at Luis Angel Acuna, the guy they just traded for Max Scherzer. Again, lots of success in that department. Meanwhile, the Cardinals haven't necessarily had that much success there. They've done the more draft and develop approach, and it's worked really well for them. So they get the short-term piece with a couple of rental options in Montgomery and Stratton, and they get some long-term option here with the international bonus pool money, which they're going to need, because remember, they didn't have their second or third round picks this year to draft some more talent. So bringing in some international free agents during the signing period is going to be very important for them to reset or refill their prospect base, especially after the trade deadline. They've traded away, four prospects out of their system so far. They traded Ragans off of their major league roster and a 17-year-old outfielder in Cabrera earlier for Aroldis Chapman. So that's one prospect out of their system. They traded away Acuna in the Scherzer deal, and now they've traded two more prospects in the Montgomery deal with the Cardinals. So they get to reset their prospect pool a little bit. But thank you guys for joining us. Let's refresh one last time. Another breakdown of the trade there. That trade, C.J. Cron, Grichuk for Madden and Albright. But that's kind of the big trade tonight. We'll be live with you guys again tomorrow at 8:30. I'll put out a couple of short videos tomorrow as well. And again, we'll be live all day with you guys on Tuesday. Make sure you join us. Hit that like button and subscribe. Really does help us out. Follow us over there on Twitter. Hit that follow button over there at UpsideSN, and on Facebook, Upside Sports Network as well. Thank you guys for joining us for our third live we've done today. And we'll see you guys tomorrow night. Y'all have a good one.